Hello buddy, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 quick match gameplay. This time around we are in the Ashen Hall playing as the Wood Elves against the force of the High Elves. And this is a match that, well, in my opinion, is definitely, and in the opinion of, to be honest, a lot of people, is a match pretty heavily skewed in favor of the High Elves. High Elves have a lot of benefits over Wood Elves. They've got a lot of silver shields. Shadow Warriors are surprisingly effective in this matchup because they're a fairly cheap, cost-effective counter to units like Way Watchers, which Wood Elves basically must bring. And besides that, High Elf Cavalry is really efficient. Silver Helms, Illyrian Reavers, and especially Dragon Princes are just brutal to deal with for the Wood Elves, and the Wood Elves don't have too many tools to deal with them. And obviously, High Elves also can bring some Doom Boxes. They can bring artillery pieces, they can bring lots of long-range archers, and that sort of stuff. So definitely there's a lot of different things High Elves can do, and countering it as Wood Elves can be tough, and definitely it tends to be pretty micro-intensive. So for my build here, I decided to go as kite-heavy as possible. Well, not kite-heavy as possible, but fairly kite-heavy, and looking to win in a sort of war maneuver, and poking and prodding. So for my lord, I'm running Orion. The King in the Woods is here to hunt, and I think this guy is pretty awesome for the match. He does, of course, have the Cloak of Isha, which gives him some good regen once he's below 20% HP. It also gives him ward save once he's below that mark, so it definitely makes him a bit tankier, much tankier than his stats would suggest. He's got a decent amount of HP, causes fear, terror. His 2 bombardments are not bad against squishy High Elf troops. Both Hounds of Orion or Hawk's Talon are decent enough there. A Foe Seeker gives him some added mobility, and he's not terrible mobility wise to begin with. 54 speed is all right. His javelin can kind of poke away. It's like a mini, very short range bolt thrower, and it can do a lot of work. And then for weapon strength, he's very, very powerful in close quarters. He got 70 charge bonus, 500 weapon strength, with plus a 15 bonus for his large, which bumps his melee attack up into almost the 90s. So pretty crazy stuff. And recently his melee defense was actually buffed, so he is a bit more survivable in close quarters. Alongside him, we do have a hero squad. We've got a Spellsinger of Shadows, of course, because we need some magic. Coming in with Melkos Miasma to control and slow enemy cav, which I'm so very worried about, as well as give me Smoke and Mirrors for that extra mobility to outrun enemy cav needed, Enfeebling Foe to weaken enemy troops in crucial situations, Blessing of the Ancients because it is a pretty forested map. I figured I might get some value out of it, and a Power Stone for more Winds of Magic. Our front line is simply 4 units of Eternal Guard with shields, 3 chevrons apiece. Not much to be said there. They will beat up High Elf Spearmen pretty efficiently, actually, which is kind of cool. But against things like White Lions, they will just get mulched and definitely are not going to have a good day. Alongside that, we also do have a Waystalker who is here because he's amazing and I love Waystalkers. And I could only bring one, sadly, because I needed a caster. But still, Waystalkers are awesome. He can pick away at Lariel. He can pick away at high-value targets over time. He's got Arrow of Kurnus, which can do some damage to formations. And definitely not a bad hero for how cheap he is. With this sort of build, he's a pretty budget lord. You get like, it's like 700 or so, 700, 800 gold for this guy. For firing squad, we do have 2 units of Way Watchers, as well as the Hawkeyes and Drakira. These guys I figured would be useful for their snare, for the smoke bomb to slow enemy cav, and the discourage to hopefully force them off faster. Finally, we do have 2 Wild Riders with shields, providing a little bit of mass and crowd control for us as well. We can kind of throw them into the grinder if needed to tie down enemy cav. Now for my opponent, he did decide to go very, very wide, and definitely a bit kitey. Over here you can see the Heralds of the Wind are being chipped away at by Orion. So definitely no Dragon Princes actually hitting the field. Definitely very surprising. But you can see those Shadow Warriors over here, 2 units of them. And another unit over on this side, fighting alongside the Storm Riders, which are the regiment around Lothern Seaguard. You don't see them very often. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan. They've got some oddball choices of abilities. They've got Fear, they've got Vanguard Deploy, and Fire on the Move, but they don't fire 360. So I'm not a big fan of them, but they definitely can be pretty potent. And I know some of the top High Elf players actually do apparently recommend them. There are also 2 Illyrian Reavers. Of course, these guys are pretty powerful. They can definitely, aren't going to outduel Wild Riders, but they can definitely do a lot of damage with their shooting and then pick away and run over your backline pretty well, especially the Heralds of the Wind, who are even faster and do more damage. For his main line, my opponent did bring a Lariel, who I actually didn't mention at first. Very potent lord, of course, probably a bit overpowered, as I kind of say often, but it definitely is true. Star of Avalorn is just stupidly powerful as a heal. Arcane Conduit, very strong to get more Winds of Magic to spam Earth, Blood, and Frost protection, which can help keep these troops in line. She also has Shield of Safri as well as Life Bloom to get those global heals and resistance stacks. Finally, for his front line, my opponent did bring some spears, 3 units of White Lions to butcher my lower tier troops. They'll basically trade into anything except Wildwood Rangers. And finally, there is a unit of archers who, I guess, my opponent has some points left over. And the Flamespire Phoenix, which is an interesting choice, not something you see very often. kind of an odd choice, but I figured it was probably because my opponent was worried about trees and wanted some decent counter to tree men or mass tree men, and perhaps bombarding my formations. Regardless, over here you can see my Weight Watchers closing very close. You can't actually see the ranges, but of course this is well within their range, and the idea was to prevent my opponent from juking. If I tried to shoot him while he was out here at my max range, chances were my opponent would spot it way too soon and dodge out of, get out of dodge. And so this way we do get a solid 6 kills on these guys in just a few volleys with their Weight Watchers before they manage to skedaddle out of range. In the meantime, we are going to bombard these Shadow Warriors, doing very little with the Hawk's Talon. It kind of whiffed there, or I guess the loose formation probably helped as well, and we actually completely missed with our Hounds, which I did cast on one of these units. In the meantime, over here, as I do decide to shift, I simply didn't want to be fighting a two-front war. I wanted to get over here and sort of fight my opponent's main force the fight over on one flank, try to keep this rock between me and my opponent's troops. And that does mean we are now getting pounded by this formation of shooting. That said, these little maneuvers over here are kind of sitting around passively, they do take a few pot shots here at my Wild Riders as they break cover, but my opponent was not paying very good attention, so we are going to be able to get the charge here, close the gap, and the Rudolphs are charging in, and of course the Tron Riders are going to demolish these ridiculous-looking, derpy cone hats that the Illyrians have. Just look at the comparison. Like, this is stupid. The Wild Riders just look so awesome, so badass, and these guys, they've got like traffic cones for hats. It's horrible. But the Illyrian Reavers do get dumpstered. They get hit by Melkos Miasma, which of course prevents them from fleeing effectively. At the same time, Smoke and Mirrors buffing the Wild Riders, making them even faster, so these guys are not able to escape at all and just get torn to shreds. Elsewhere though, well, these Eternal Guard have had a horrible day. They're down to 30 models. Almost all of their HP is gone. I, of course, did not bring any healing, and so they are going to get shredded here. The White Lions get a charge and take basically no damage before mulching those poor guys. Elsewhere, though, the Eternal Guard intercept the White Lions. They're actually going to trade okay. It's definitely going to be an atrocious battle. White Lions, not the greatest at killing high melee defense infantry. Their own melee attack is not that high. Over here, these White Lions think they're going to be a bit cheeky, and they immediately come under crossfire from all these Way Watchers. And, of course, Orion is on station, ready to intercept if they get a little too close. Over here, the Wild Riders get on top of the Shadow Warriors, but I was not paying attention. Big misplay on my part, and I missed that my opponent dropped a Frost Protection on them. So now these Wild Riders are in a dreadful position. Flame Spire's coming in. It's going to start picking models off and killing some of these Rudolphs. And things are going to look much, much more grim. Elsewhere, though, these Wild Riders who had been hiding in the woods over there have been pulled over here. They are sitting there ready to jump on any target at a moment's notice. My opponent here is trying to heal the Storm Riders, but they are routing. They're just breaking under pressure, and he has completely forgotten about this flank of troops. And that's one of the problems with these high micro games, is that you'll often just lose track of certain units. And so these guys are finally moving, but definitely a bit late to the party. They need to be moving much sooner. Over here, the Wild Riders do get into the Storm Riders, but are not able to pursue them before the Spearmen intercept, so definitely some rough stuff here. You can see they're actually going to break. One of the sad parts there was that I actually discouraged them with my own shooting, with my own Way Watcher fire. Now with the rear shots from the Shadow Warriors, they are going to break. That said, these White Lions here, trying to be very, very brave, got caught by Melkos Miasma, run down by Wild Riders, and crossfired by Way Watchers, so they get completely destroyed, and are forced to flee back to the lands from whence they came. Over here, the Archers getting destroyed as well by Way Watcher fire. I figured at this point I need to get them off the field. It doesn't matter if I'm expending Way Watcher ammo for it. But big misplay on my part here. My opponent did manage to sneak in with the Shadow Warriors, and instead of pulling my Way Watchers further towards the right, further towards my right flank, even just to destroy these White Lions in the process, I let him sit here, and you can see that Shadow Warrior fire coming in, and it's going to start picking off models. These guys are already down 3 models. They're going to start losing more as those arrows kind of dart through the woods and do some pressure. In the meantime, the Eternal Guard holding alright, not amazing, but okay, they are doing their best. And although there is going to be some fire pooping on these Hawkeyes, it's not really going to be enough. They do have a pretty wide formation, and so we're going to be able to skedaddle with our Way Watchers, just running for dear life in this direction, while the Wild Riders do some mop-up, some cleanup in Aisle 9 against these White Lions of Crace. More fire poop is going down. I had my Way Watchers turned off fire will, so they're not shooting at the Phoenix. I figured, you know, it's not really worth the waste of ammo. We do fire volley. They're trying to zone him off or rout him off, and he does flee, but it's definitely not going to be doing very much damage. The Phoenix is just way too fast and too agile. In the meantime, the Waystalker has started applying pressure to Alariel, who is just sitting here. My opponent kind of obviously not wanting to commit to the fight because there is a good chance that she could get destroyed. She does pop a Star of Avalorn over here on the White Lions, probably a bit wasteful. So the thing is, Orion tends to kill entire models with each swing of his spear. And because of that, these White Lions, they're dying. You can see he just hurls in point blank, and he's killing some of these guys. So they're not getting healed. And that's definitely, I think, a bit of a misplay there. Regardless, Alarielle, of course, very safe back here, but getting picked at by the Waystalker. And it's definitely, she's starting to pay for it. She has lost a good bit of HP, which is definitely nice. In the meantime, the Waywatchers here do unload on the Spearmen as they try to close the gap on our Waystalker. A huge misplay here on my part was not using my Winds of Magic properly. I had a lot of Winds of Magic on my Spellslinger of Shadows, and I just kept forgetting to use, I should have used Enfeebling Foe and Mal'Koth Miasma so much more often to whittle my opponent down, just did not. Over here, though, the Shadow Warriors are forced off by the rallied Wild Riders who got routed off earlier. This game, there was a lot of routing and returning because both factions are fairly high leadership and do tend to rally pretty effectively. Unfortunately, these Wild Riders themselves are going to start crumpling under pressure from the Leader Reavers, who they themselves routed much sooner into the game. And in the meantime, we are kind of leaving some Eternal Guard here to just bog my opponent down, buy me some time while we retreat and realign our troops. And one of the mistakes here on my opponent's part is using his Shadow Warriors to pick at my Waystalker. Now, Waystalker is a very important target. He's very dangerous. He does still have 18 rounds of ammo, which can have a huge impact. Sure. But at long range like this, you're not going to get a lot of hits with Shadow Warriors. So they are wasting their ammo here, doing almost nothing to him. He's just backing off, and these guys are almost out of shots, and that's going to be a big, big issue. Meantime, my Waywatchers, who have been kind of conserving their ammo on, get a few volleys here on these Leader Reavers, which is going to be enough to break them. You can see their leadership there just drops. I was trying to conserve the remaining ammo in my Hawkeyes, the reason being that I want that discouraged effect to potentially kick in. It's one of those things you always want to keep in mind. The ammo, if you can save ammo on, say, Leader Reavers, and then use that discouraged effect later, it can be so decisive. For my opponent, though, balance of power kind of in his favor right now. Just a tiny bit, maybe a little closer towards center slowly. We do get an intercept here with the spears, but definitely the game's still hanging very much in the balance. Orion dives in there, smashes some of those white lines, gets charged out by the Flame Spire Phoenix. And it's going to be a duel of man versus bird over here as this fiery pigeon tries to go toe-to-toe with the King of the Woods. And he's going to lay the smackdown on him. Flame Spire Phoenix, though, with Frost Protection is kind of tanky. Definitely does have 57 melee defense, so Orion still has way better stats offensively. And you can see there he does impale the Flame Spire Phoenix. The bird gets smushed. In come the Wild Riders, and the bird is being forced to back off. And one of the problems I think with this game was that my opponent never committed his Flame Spire Phoenix to ground fight, perhaps worried that it would be intercepted. But now it's a little late for it to get value out of, for example, its heal and that sort of stuff. And so, unfortunately for me, though, these Shadow Warriors are in the way, so they're going to prevent my pursuit of the Flame Spire Phoenix. The pigeon does escape. But Alarielle is being kind of zoned off. The Waystalker just picking away at her whenever she tries to get close and be a pain in the rear. Another shot over there does pick off a few spears. And we're going to try to get a Hounds of Orion off. It does kind of do some damage before meandering off and doing nothing. The Wild Riders, though, slugging out with the Shadow Warriors unsuccessfully in the protracted fight. Though these white lines are going to be forced to back the hell away. At this point, the Hawkeyes are out of ammo, and this fight is definitely dead center. And it's funny because at this point, there's almost nothing left. The Heralds of the Wind out of ammo. Shadow Warriors all out of ammo. Wild Riders down to half HP and almost no model. And actually, most of their models are still intact, but very low on HP. And so my opponent finally, in desperation, throws Alarielle into the fight, looking to snipe down my caster, looking to stop these remaining Waywatchers from firing, and it's going to be a huge mistake because the Hawkeyes are there, Smoke Bomb goes down, she is frozen in place, unable to escape, getting shanked in the back, and here's the other bad part. We're hit with an Enfeebling Foe, and the caster has 90 speed, so she is able to stay on Alarielle here. Wild Riders come in, and the Pigeon Lady is trapped. She's down on the ground, she's got only 20 melee defense. Does recover now, but it's just such a bad spot, and she's getting torn to shreds by those encroaching troops. Now, at this point, there are lots of Storm Riders trying to get in, some Illyrian Reavers trying to charge in. My opponent is trying to pincer me, but unfortunately, his troops are all bogged down over here, trying to fight Orion, who's just dominating them with his monstrous melee stats and just destroying them. He does finally pull clear. He actually still has a bit of ammo as well, so that could also be potent in the late game. But regardless, over here, the Heralds hit by Mal'Koth Miasma, Alarielle getting torn to shreds, White Lions trying to save her, trying to free their queen, trying to get her clear, but she's just being bogged down by so much mass. Down to 74 HP, the Waystalker still firing from out of range there, arcing shots in, and now finally snipes the Pigeon Lady. She topples from her pigeon, and that is going to be game. So a very brutal back and forth game of High Elf versus Wood Elf, as most of these games do tend to be. I think that due to how difficult it is for the Wood Elves in this match, I think most of the time the games are either end in a brutal fashion favoring the High Elves, or it comes down to the wire in a very back and forth sort of shootout manner. Going over the build, I did have a lot of fun with it. I think it's actually not a bad build against the High Elves. Waystalker is very useful for just chipping away at units with his Arrow of Kurnus, for sniping away at Alariel and forcing her off a little bit. Orion is just a tank. And Spellslinger there, providing a good bit of utility. For a build that doesn't need too much healing, to be honest, because Orion self-heals and the rest of the force, well, it's not super expensive. Waywatchers, you don't really look to heal them. You're looking to just not get them killed in the first place. There's definitely a lot of back and forth micro, I think, on both sides. My opponent trying to juke some of my Waywatcher shots, while I myself was trying to wait until he was too close to juke, and that sort of stuff. And it definitely demonstrates, I think, just how the skirmish game can go in this game, how intensive skirmishing can be. And my opponent kind of losing track of his Heralds of the Wind and some of the Shadow Warriors might have been a bit decisive in that game. For me, definitely there was a few mistakes. I missed that false protection going down to the Shadow Warriors. Now, the unit has decent melee stats to begin with, but when they get hit with a false protection, they're just stupidly powerful in melee. They're very, very survivable, and the Wild Riders are wasting their time trying to beat down on the Shadow Warriors when they really should have just gone away, gone after a different target. Orion, in the end, definitely a big champion. Orion's so strong. He can sit tight, hold his own, and slog it out with basically everything in a straight-up fight. Now, he does lose out to a few lords. He does lose out in like a really long fight. But the fact that Cloak of Isha kicks in, he starts getting that heal, he starts getting that 44% save, and now he's got okay melee defense at 40, just makes him pretty beastly. Like the Flamespire Phoenix, I think, only has 42 or so melee attacks, so it's not able to damage him consistently. And that was definitely a big factor in that game, I think, at the end there, where Orion survived, and when Alariel was forced to commit, she could not survive. Regardless, well played to my opponent here, Agakun. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you found it fun, entertaining, and perhaps give you guys some ideas on this, how to play out the matchup from the Wood Elf perspective without, I guess, cheesing. I did feel that this was a pretty reasonable, well-rounded build, all things considered. Definitely was cool to use the Hawkeyes as well, who I don't use all that often, but they're very, very powerful. But definitely hope you guys enjoyed. As usual, if you have comments, criticism, or requests, don't hesitate to post them in the comments, and I'll do my best to respond as soon as I can. I do thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.